Okay, hi Phil.
Hi.
Hiya. So given that this is our first session, I thought perhaps I'd start, say a little bit about the way I work, about how the session's going to be constructed, and then we'll get on to the issues that are bothering you. Does that sound okay?
Okay, yeah.
Okay. So thank you for your letter, your referral letter, which tells me a little bit about why you've come. But it's important that we set a few kind of ground rules and kind of boundaries around the work. So what I want to tell you is that anything in that, or that we talk about, is confidential. Okay. There are times when I might need to talk to GPs, people like that, but that would only ever happen with your written permission. Okay. My notes are kept safe. I write very kind of factual notes, so just a kind of very brief description of what we've talked about and any particular issues that come up, and you have access to those notes through me if you want to see them. Okay. Otherwise they're confidential. Right. And the only time I would break confidentiality is if I was seriously concerned about your well-being, or about the safety and well-being of anybody else.
Okay, yeah.
Okay. Have you had a bit of counselling before?
I have, yeah, many years ago.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. What do you remember of that?
I found it a really useful experience, really, just to talk things through.
Right.
And had about 10 sessions.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And did that end because it felt like it was enough?
Yeah.
At the time?
Yeah.
Okay. The way I work may or may not be different to that. So if I just tell you a little bit about the kind of things that I'm interested in and how I imagine the sessions to go. So one of the things is the sessions are 50 minutes long. You don't need to worry about the time. That's my responsibility.
Okay.
Yeah. But I would like us to meet on a regular basis. And I think, you know, in your referral we talked about maybe meeting weekly for, say, 6 to 8 sessions.
Yeah.
Then we can review. Yeah. So if we agree to meet at this time every week for the next 6 weeks. Yeah. The kind of things I'm interested in are relationships. So our relationship I'm interested in, how we work together, and whether that mirrors anything of what you're experiencing in other relationships, either with people or maybe things, you know, your relationship with work maybe.
Okay.
And I'm also kind of interested in your early relationships, so how those may have impacted on how things are now.
Okay.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, we'll kind of see where it goes.
Okay.
Yeah. What I'd really like in the sessions is for you to just talk about anything that comes to mind, really.
Okay.
You know, if you have a particular dream or a kind of, you know, daydream or thoughts that you kind of mull over in the week, you know, bring them here.
Yeah.
And maybe we can use those to help us understand what's going on.
Yeah.
Does that sound all right?
Okay, yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
And if at any point you're feeling, you know, uncomfortable with me or with the sessions, it'd be really helpful if we could find a way of talking about that.
Right, okay.
Okay.
Right. Yeah, good.
Great.
Okay.
All right. So should we begin with the issues that you put down on your referral and the issues that you're kind of bringing today?
Yeah.
Okay, so what's going on for you?
What's going on for me right at the moment? I'm feeling a bit anxious at the
Are
moment.
you?
Yeah,
okay.
just to get started.
Yeah.
What I actually, the things that I'm coming with is that recently I've been feeling a bit stressed and anxious about things in general, which is I think is unusual for me.
Right.
And I'm aware of the fact that that linked to that is that I will take things on and I have things to do, and I'm really good at putting those off or putting some of the things off.
Okay.
So I see that those are connected.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And you also connected feeling a bit anxious here, which I guess is another one of those things that you said you'd do, and actually now you're here. It's perhaps a bit unnerving.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Actually,
absolutely.
Yeah,
So meeting somebody new for the first time and in this setting, it is anxiety provoking.
yeah.
And maybe that's similar to what you're saying, is you take on these things, you agree to do these things, but actually what you end up feeling is quite anxious about it.
Yeah.
Okay. You also said this was a bit new. When does it feel like things have changed?
I probably a couple of, maybe 6 weeks ago, something. Yeah, but I see that as quite recent.
Okay.
When I would actually, I'd get symptoms of not exactly panic. That I don't seem as I don't have a panic attack.
Sure.
But I can feel like a rising sort of panic here.
Okay, in your chest.
Yeah. And then that can feel, can end up feeling a bit sort of nauseous there, and you know, having to really sort of breathe to just sort of calm down. I'm not quite feeling that at the moment.
Okay.
But that happened, as I say, probably about 6 weeks ago. Happened for a couple of weeks and then just kind of leveled off again. And that was the first time I'd ever experienced that.
Okay. Do you remember that very first time?
I'm having difficulty remembering the very first time.
Okay. Is there a time that comes to mind?
But I can think of a time that's representative of that. It might have been the first
Okay.
time.
What came to mind?
Just feeling overwhelmed, I think. Just being aware of the fact that I needed to go and do things, and some of the things were, you know, things that maybe I put off. And just feeling as though there was overwhelmed, too much going on. And yet when I sat down and tried to work it out, because I like to be able to do that, I like to be able to say, this is connected to this.
Sure.
When I tried to put my finger on was the one specific thing, I couldn't do that. It was just, there was a collection of small things, which when I looked at them each in turn,
they were all manageable.
They were all manageable, but the collective seemed to be a bit overwhelming, really.
Okay, okay. And these things that were felt overwhelming, were they all placed in, you know, to do with one aspect of your life, or is this a kind of general?
I think that they probably, when I think about it, there were probably aspects of work where they were, but it's not exclusive to work. There's other things, you know. There's things within the home, just very practical things, like maybe you know, doing some DIY at home that I really should have done. You know, that's a very simple and, you know, sounds to me like a really trivial example, but it's...
Yeah, but what you're saying is it's not one thing.
Yes.
Yeah? So the individual doing the bit of DIY is not problematic.
No.
But feels problematic because all these other things are there.
Because there's so many of them,
Okay. So is that something that feels new, that you've taken on such an array of things, or is that something you've done in the past?
I think I'm very good at taking on things and I've done that in the past.
Right.
But I suppose that they've always been manageable. I've always managed to work through them, even though I might have in my head a list of things to do.
Right.
They've always been achievable, and they've always been sort of, I'm struggling a bit for the words here. I suppose it's a matter of me sort of, I've always managed to break them down and just deal with these things one at a time. And so they haven't been overwhelming. But I suppose that I can identify that I'm very good at saying, yes, I'll do something.
Right.
And especially if it's a few months down the line. Then I'll say yes to them, and then all of a sudden, what was a few months down the line suddenly is, next week or today or whatever. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that thing of saying yes is something you really resonate with, and feels like that's part of who you are.
Yeah.
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 Okay. So do you make any sense of that? What's your understanding of why you say yes?
I think that I say yes because I find it difficult to say no.
Okay.
And I suppose that sort of linked in with that is, I don't like to sort of let people down. I don't want to disappoint people.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So my guess is that would be very alive in our meetings, that there'd be a part of you, I guess, that would want to get it right, or wouldn't want to let me down, maybe.
Yeah, I can see that, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's just for us to kind of notice and recognise, really. Because there may be times in here where you do want to challenge something I say, or, maybe you don't want to turn up one week.
Right.
You want to go do something else.
Right.
What might that feel like?
Right.
To not make the appointment, or to not get it right. Or, whatever. Does that bring anything up for you, that idea of letting someone down, or of saying no?
Yeah, as soon as you said it, and as soon as I thought about it, that just doesn't sit well with me. That doesn't feel comfortable.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it would be really difficult to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it must be very hard for you to say no to things, even when they feel like it's another demand.
Yes. Yeah. I think I can do it.
Right.
But it's hard.
Right.
It's hard for me to do.
Okay.
Yeah,
Do you want to say a bit about that?
I don't quite know where to go with that.
Right.
Actually, yeah.
Okay.
That feels
really uncomfortable, or
feels a bit. I feel a bit stuck there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that might really be helpful for us to see that that's a place where it feels stuck, that it's difficult to even imagine saying no to somebody, refusing to do things in a kind of easy way, that it would be something quite challenging.
Yes, I have to kind of prepare myself for that. It's far easier for me to say, yeah, go on, I'll do it, yeah, that's fine, put my name down, or I'll take that on.
Okay.
Whereas if I'll have to get to the point where I'm thinking, I've just got too much, there's too much going on for me to actually, I suppose, to get myself to the point where I can turn around to somebody and say, no, I can't do that.
Okay.
And so it's the easier option is to say, yeah, I'll do that. Yeah.
Except I guess what you're telling me is it's not necessarily the easiest option in the long run.
No, it's not.
No.
Because then I end up in that place where I end up taking too much on, and then you can't really sort of. I feel as though then I feel as though I'd really be letting somebody down if I say yes to something.
Yeah.
And then I would really I'd be letting somebody down.
Right.
It seems as I'm sitting here as I'm talking about it, logically it seems it'd be far easier if I just, when they first ask me, just to say no, I can't do that.
But it may be almost habitual that you say yes. It sounds like that's become a real pattern for you.
Yeah.
Okay. Does that fit in at all with any of your kind of early experiences of life? Does anything come to mind? School, family?
what's come to mind there
Yeah.
is that I was my strategy for getting through secondary school. I went
Right.
to I remember leaving the standard sort of the small primary school and going into secondary school, which was a comprehensive in Liverpool, and
Right.
suddenly I remember the first day
Right.
of standing there and just being, I suppose, overwhelmed by the size of the new place I'd got to. And I think as a strategy for coping fairly early on in that school was a kind of, was to sort of keep your head down and sort of just get on with it, and I suppose maybe the connection there might be just to sort of is to not be resistant to stuff and be compliant with stuff.
Right.
But I don't know whether that's right. But certainly, as you were talking about
That's what
those
came
early
to mind.
memories, that's a very powerful memory of me. That's the way I got through secondary school.
Yeah.
If you keep your head down, then people won't target you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Sounds like it was quite a hard school.
It was. I suppose that, looking back on it, I don't see it quite like that, but I guess at the time when I was 11,
Right.
standing there
Yeah.
in my new blazer,
Okay.
then that was a scary place.
Right.
Yeah.
And I guess that's the bit that feels really relevant, is that was your experience.
Yeah.
Your experience of going to that school on that first day was that it was big and scary.
Yeah.
And that somehow or another you needed to find a method of staying safe and keeping your head down, being compliant, saying yes was what happened.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about in your home? Was your home a place where you could say no?
The memories I have of home was a very the home was a very safe place.
Right.
I think that but I don't think I don't think I said no, but I don't think there was anything there that I'm aware of that I would have been concerned about. Yeah, like I say, it felt a very safe place, a very loving place.
Right.
So I didn't get hit or shouted at. But I don't know whether that's because at that point I'd already developed this sort of, just keep quiet, and I've never really thought
Right.
that far back.
Okay.
Yeah. Or made that connection.
And there might not be a connection. Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah,
there
yeah.
may be or there may not be. I mean, the connection might be that home did feel safe.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a place where you were avoiding conflict. So maybe going to the secondary school was a stark contrast to that.
Right.
A place that really didn't feel safe.
Yeah, that feels more like it.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And somehow or another, that method of coping, of keep your head down, just say yes, has stayed with you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even though the danger is probably less there now.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Remember a work colleague many years ago said that I sort of have this, how did he describe it? Because he was quite an active person in sort of standing up and shouting, or standing up and making his point felt.
Right.
And I think that he described me as having a cloak of invisibility. Yeah. That I just found a level to sort of get on with and to drift through, I suppose.
Okay.
Yeah. Which I kind of took at the time as a sort of a compliment, I think.
Right. How about now? Because it looks like you're questioning that.
Yeah. It's if that's kind of connected to this, not wanting to sort of, not wanting to make ripples and just to sort of, and therefore taking on stuff and not saying no to people, then I don't think that sounds like it's not a. I've always seen it as a fairly useful strategy, but now maybe it's not. If that's
and maybe it's both, because I think that what you described happening to you at a really quite young age at school was that you naturally found a method of coping that actually did work. It sounds like you didn't get picked on at school. You did manage to find a way through it, and actually that served you very well.
Yeah.
Most of the time. But perhaps what you're saying to me is it's not serving you so well right now.
Right.
Yeah?
Yeah, huh?
Maybe there's something that's changed in your life at the moment, or the situation's changed, whereby that method of coping is actually becoming a problem.
Well, yes, yeah. I can see how that connects, and I can see how that what's going on for me at the moment is not good, in the sense that I'm getting to the point where I've been relatively sort of anxiety free, and yet now I'm actually feeling as though that's not what's going on for me at the moment. Yeah.
Okay, so shall we go back to that 6 weeks ago, because it feels like that was really relevant, that something really changed for you at that point.
Yeah.
And what you're saying is it's not clear what it was in particular. Had you taken on more than normal? I guess
I'm really not aware that I'd taken on any more than usual. And when I kind of sat down and tried to work it out, I couldn't put my finger on any. Well, like I said earlier, I can't put my finger on one thing. It just seemed like a collection of things, really. So I'm hard pushed to think, was there something specific happening?
Maybe unconnected. I mean, sometimes it can be something like an anniversary or a birthday, or a whole range of things. But it feels like something shifted for you.
Yeah. All that springs to mind there is that I'd been working at the same place for 25 years.
Right.
So and that happened around that time, that it was acknowledged that I'd been working at the same place for 25 years, and so I don't know where that came from. I don't know. I mean, apart from you actually saying anniversary, because I really can't think that is necessarily connected to me feeling anxious, but it might be.
Sounds like a significant event.
Yeah.
Was that golden handshake or something?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
And you're saying it was acknowledged, so.
It was, but it was. I think part of me thinks that it wasn't very well acknowledged, maybe.
Right.
And I remember at the time feeling like as though I had a question over whether I was actually being valued.
Right.
And even as I say that now, that kind of I feel an emotional connection to that.
Right.
That kind of feels feels like there's something going on. And yet how that connects or doesn't, from, this whole thing about, a significant event, not particularly feeling valued by the response I got for that, and me getting anxious.
Well, I guess one connection that we could make quite quickly, I guess, is something about what you're saying is that you do say yes, you do take on work. Yeah? That actually from your perspective, you give what you've got to give. And there may be some connection in that actually, you've given as much as you can, you've taken on all these things, and yet somehow it doesn't feel like it's quite valued enough. So maybe it leaves you a bit invisible. Does that resonate?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Don't know what to do with it though.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I guess maybe you don't need to do anything with it. Maybe just acknowledging that feels like a step forward. Because what you're saying is this event happened and it almost feels like you sort of felt it and pushed it away. So when I mentioned, was there anything significant, that came to mind, and as you said, there's an emotional response to it. So it is significant, it's something that's really important, and it's fairly recent.
Yeah.
How would you have liked to have been recognised? Do you know?
I have no idea.
Right.
Isn't that weird?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think part of me thinks maybe not at all.
Okay.
Well, that's interesting. I don't know where to go with that. I don't know. I don't know. Never thought about it. And even as I'm sitting here now trying to think about it, I've gone blank.
Right.
I just have no idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and maybe that going blank just tells us that it's a bit difficult to think about. I mean, I think certainly my experience is when feelings are kind of powerful, it is really hard to think. And I'm also aware that this isn't our only session, so there's time for us to come back to that if it feels relevant.
Yeah.
And some of these things that we're kind of linking together, maybe you'll go away and mull that over and it will make more sense.
Yeah.
Maybe not.
Yeah.
But I guess, what feels really helpful is the fact that what you have allowed to happen is just thoughts to come into your mind.
Right.
Yeah. And what you're saying is, why did that thought come in?
Yeah.
Why that image? But it feels important. Yeah. Something about being recognised in a positive way, which your cloak of invisibility perhaps denies you.
Yeah.
Is the negative part of being not recognised and being able to get through the difficult bits.
Yeah.
Do you want to say a little bit more about, you mentioned the word procrastination earlier.
Yes, okay. And that's linked to all these things that I say I'll take on.
Okay.
I think I think that procrastination kind of sits in lots of areas of my life, really. There's things I'd like to, there's things I'd like to do, or I think I'd like to do, and then find reasons not to do them. And so there's obvious things when I sort of say to other people that I'll do something, and then I'll be in a situation where I have to do it, or will say no. But there's things that I also kind of expect from myself. There's like little things that I want to achieve for me, some of which I do and some of which I put off. And I suppose when I put them off, I don't think I ever really give myself a hard time about it, but it's just another something else that I've put off and I feel as though I'd like to do. An example of that might be years ago I felt as though I was really quite creative.
Right.
Yeah, I'd sit and draw, I'd play guitar, I'd write, and I still play guitar, and I still sort of promise myself I'm going to sit down and draw. Yeah. But I think that sort of laughingly I say to myself, oh, that's the kind of thing I'll do when I retire. I'll take up watercolours when I retire. Right. And so I always manage to sort of put something off. And yet there's part of me that thinks that's really important, that it's really important for me to do these things for me, and then I don't do them. And I just feel, and then I feel kind of, I don't know, well, I'm not sure what I feel about that really. I feel a bit sort of, the word that springs to mind is, I feel a bit disconnected.
Disconnected?
Yeah, disconnected to a part of me, I suppose. Right. And I don't know where that's coming from either, but that's what's in my mind at the moment.
Can you describe that part of you?
I suppose it's the I suppose I just describe it as I did earlier on, as a sort of a creative, the creative side or the creative part. It's the part that gives me I don't know. It's a part that I feel as though I've neglected, I suppose.
Right.
So maybe a neglected part of me. And as I say that feels a bit uncomfortable as well.
Where does that feel uncomfortable?
Do you mean in my body? It feels... It sort of sits somewhere, it just sits somewhere here. I think. It's hard to describe that.
Right.
But I just feel as though I suppose a bit, maybe that bit's a bit sort of a part of me that I've sort of left behind or lost, and that I would like to reconnect to, or reclaim, just sort of get back in touch with, and I feel as though that's important for me because it'll make me sort of more whole, more rounded. It's almost like I put that on one side to get on with other stuff.
Okay, and the other stuff
is probably work, isn't it?
Right.
Yeah.
Do you enjoy your work?
I enjoy parts of my work, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. But obviously at a time when I'm feeling quite overwhelmed with bits of it, then I kind of don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So there's, I mean, I guess if I reflect something that's going
Yeah.
on for me is I keep going back to this cloak, really.
Right.
You know, I think it's a really interesting image, isn't it? This cloak of invisibility.
Right.
And the reason it's there in my mind is because I'm thinking, well, what does a cloak do? And yes, it would enable you to not be seen and go through, yeah. But also maybe it covers up something.
Right.
And the things you're talking about, being creative, you know, making music, making art, and those kind of things, you know, they're kind of things that are seen, aren't they?
Right.
Are an expression of yourself. And somehow they've been covered up. So this other part of you that gets on with it, I think is what you said,
Yeah.
is able to do that.
Yeah.
But it feels now split off. You'd like that back.
Yes.
Yeah. And I guess having that back partly involves saying no.
Well, that's right. It would, you know, the saying no would free up more time.
Yeah.
But then I don't know whether I would make use of that time,
Right.
or whether I would just sit and procrastinate and not you know, find reasons not to do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So it feels like you're suggesting that actually there's something within you that both wants the creative bit, but also does things to prevent it from happening.
Yeah. Yeah, there's no reason why I can't, there's no reason why I can't find time.
Right.
It's you know, there's, you know, I can go home quite happily and sit in front of the television when I could actually be doing something more creative.
So what comes up for you if I suggest, you know, that you dive into that creativity? Does it feel like?
I think it feels a bit risky.
Right.
Like as though it's, you know, I used to do it so long ago, I don't really know whether I could do it anymore. And so to actually try it might mean that I realise that I can't do it, or can't do it as well as I like to think I'd be able to do it. I think there's an element of that in there.
So a fear of not getting it right, or
Yeah.
yeah.
So it's easier for me to stick with things that I know I can get right than to take on something which is, you know, I might get, well, you can't technically get a creative piece wrong, but it may not be as good as I would like it to be.
So that's where the self-critic lies. That there's a sense that you would have an expectation of yourself, and if you didn't live up to it, that would be difficult.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that critic alive in your work? Or in other aspects of your life, maybe?
It doesn't really feel as though it's there in my work.
Okay.
As you say that, in fact, part of me feels as though it's not exactly the opposite, but part of me feels as though I'm quite happy getting things wrong. I'm quite happy believing that just gives me some, some opportunity to do something better if I actually get something wrong. I would learn from mistakes, that kind of thing. And yet that doesn't apply when I'm thinking about maybe wanting to do sit down and draw or paint.
Okay.
Yeah.
So a real
Which is
split
really,
there.
Really odd. That's a really odd thing. That doesn't make sense to me at all.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Have you realised that before?
No, that's no. And yet I'm really, when I say to I've always said to my kids, if they do something wrong, if the first time they do something wrong, I never tell them off when they do something wrong. They probably hate me for it, but my mantra is, what did you learn from that? Yeah, and then if they do it wrong a second time, then they can get shouted at because they haven't learned something from it. And so I'm actually think I'm very open to this idea of get it wrong and you learn something from it. And yet that is exactly what's not going on when it comes to sitting down and being creative, which I just, and that's brand new to me.
Right.
Absolutely, I've never thought of, never thought about it, never made that connection. That's, like I say, that just doesn't make, that really just genuinely doesn't make sense to me. Yeah, that I'd have to get something absolutely right first time over here, not having done it for 15 years. And yet over here I'm quite happy to make mistakes and acknowledge them.
Do you feel as though there's something very precious about the creative aspect of you? Whereas it feels like in your work you're a bit more robust. You're able to get it wrong.
I suppose I'm more confident in my work and in other areas of my life. Being creative is, while I would only be doing that for me anyway. But I don't feel confident there.
Is the doing it just for me a factor, do you think? Because it sounds like you do a lot of things for other people in the saying yes and taking on the things. What you said was you didn't want to let anybody down or disappoint anybody.
I can see that. I haven't really thought about that. That's gone. That just kind of, I've just blanked. I don't know what happened there in that sense, but I was following that train of thought and then I just lost it. Yeah.
Again, I think there's something that you've really kind of demonstrated here, which is that, those moments when we've stopped being able to think, are often moments where it actually feels like something's really resonating. And I think sometimes you just have to sit with that. Yeah? We could rush in with all sorts of ideas about it, but that really might not be helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah? We're coming towards the end of the session, and it feels as though it's been incredibly full.
Right,
actually. My experience of the session. As if there's been, we've been to your school, we've been, many places really. And I guess what will happen over the week is that some of that will kind of, you'll mull it over, or It might spark things in your imagination. It might impact on your sleep and your dreams, you know. And what I would encourage you to do is just let that happen.
Okay.
Yeah? Bring back what feels relevant to the next session.
Right.
And we'll see if we can make some more sense out of things.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's been a real pleasure getting to know you.
Yeah. Has that been? How long have we been talking?
We've been talking for 50 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Right.
Does it feel like it
It
wasn't as long as that?
It doesn't feel like that at all.
Right.
No.
Feels like it's gone quickly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great.
Okay, so I'll see you the same time next week.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tina, thank you so much for agreeing to be filmed today. And if you're willing, I was just hoping to ask you a few questions about your approach and the session that you've just delivered.
Yeah,
Is that
fine.
okay? Brilliant. First of all, can you tell me a little bit about your approach to counselling and psychotherapy?
Yeah, well, my training is psychoanalytic, psychodynamic, and my approach differs in some ways depending on the setting. So, for example, if I'm working in my private practice seeing people for several years, yeah, my technique, as it were, would be much less active. Yeah, so I'd be much more willing to sit back. And although I'm very much interested in the relationship with the client, I would probably say a lot less and ask a lot less questions, and would have an awareness that if something came up, you know, I don't need to make an interpretation about that until the client's ready. So I would, be much slower, in a sense, and be very much more working on a kind of relational basis. In other work that I do, other settings that I work, the work is much briefer, so maybe 6 to 10 sessions, that kind of thing. And in that work I'm a lot more active, and I think a lot of modern psychodynamic therapists are a lot more active, really. So the things that, as I said in the beginning of the session, really, the things that I'm particularly interested in are relationships. So I'm interested in people's relationships with their early families, with their current people in their lives. I'm interested in their relationship with me, and how that plays out and how they might work with me. And I'm really interested in their relationship with themselves. So just as happened in the session, what people often realise is that they would describe, different parts of themselves. Yeah, there's a bit of me that really likes doing things, and there's a bit of me that's really scared of getting it wrong, and we have a conflict with that. So I'm really interested in internal relational conflicts. Certainly, my ideas about therapy and counselling are that we can't change the outside world, and actually the outside world isn't really necessarily the problem. The problem is how we feel about that. And our feelings are that internal relationships, and usually people come to counselling when there's a conflict, some sort of internal conflict. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, that's brilliant. You mentioned before the modern approach, and I'm just wondering how the modern psychodynamic therapy differs from the traditional approach, the textbook approach, if you like,
Right.
that's often reported and linked to Freud and those types of things.
Hugely different. So I think psychoanalytic and psychodynamic gets a bad press, I'd like to say that, because what people do is they talk about Freud, and it's a bit like, looking at a Morris Minor in comparison to a modern car. It just doesn't work. The traditional Freudian kind of way of working would be somebody on the couch for, five sessions a week. The therapist being very much a blank screen, etc., etc. Modern psychotherapy is very different to that. It's very much more relational. People, would come maybe once, twice a week, sit facing each other. All of the kind of core concepts of counselling would be there in terms of the relational part of it. I also think that the theorists, modern theorists, have a huge lot to give, really. So most psychodynamic people would be thinking about things like attachments, you know, and working with kind of in their minds would be thinking about attachment theory. They'd be thinking about Kleinian, or I certainly work on a kind of Kleinian idea of part objects within the self. And in a way, you know, the client described that brilliantly by saying, you know, there's different aspects of me. And of course, some of those aspects we can know about because they're conscious, and some of them are more revealed in our unconscious worlds. So dreams and free association, use of words. You will have noticed in the session that, you know, the words that the client used, I would pick up on. Because there's a whole gamut of words one can use. It's very interesting why those ones come to mind. And the free association is still there, but it's there in the way that, as the client said, well, the first thought I had was, or oh, that takes me back to, that would be considered to be free association. But very different to a sort of, you know, word game. That wouldn't happen now.
So just looking at the session and reflecting on the session that you've just delivered, can you tell me a little bit about the relationship that you felt developed with that client? And can you tell me if you experienced any of the textbook psychodynamic dimensions like transference and those types of parts of the relationship?
Yeah. In terms of how the relationship went, I mean, the session was full and the client seemed to talk quite openly. I think there were a couple of times where he seemed very reflective, as if something was going on internally that was difficult to perhaps communicate or difficult to articulate. And that felt, for me, as though that was very much part of a first session, that it would take time really to build a relationship where somebody's, you know, really able to say whatever comes into their minds. But my sense of it was that there was an element of warmth, and I was very interested and really appreciated it when the client talked about the issues that had emotional resonance, really. And it felt at those moments that there was a good rapport, really. But I'd say it was something that one builds on, you know, and that the relationship is something that develops over time and is an incredibly powerful part of the work that I do.
And again, reflecting on the session that you've just delivered, I'm just wondering if there are any specific techniques that were used, so transference analysis and dream analysis, free association. You mentioned some of the free association, but any of the typical techniques?
I think, I mean, if you look at, there was a part in the session, I think, when I said something about how his relationships with other people might well be mirrored in our work together, that it might be difficult to let me down. And that was a kind of very tentative interpretation. You know, it wasn't necessarily something that was happening in the session, but I think I said it just to open that as a possibility of something we could explore later. So my experience wasn't that he was desperately trying to please me, or that fitted to any of the relationships we'd talked about. But my guess is that over time, if those things were relevant, they would become more obvious. I mean, I think, you know, transference interpretation is not something one would rush into. Yeah. You would spend quite a lot of time thinking about it, experiencing it. My own countertransference would be really important. You know, what was going on for me? What was I feeling? Did I feel a kind of propelled to behave in a way that's not my natural way? And that certainly didn't happen in the session. But you know, it might be something that one would look for. The free association, I think, was very much there, and I really appreciated his willingness to just say what came into his mind and go back to those places that felt relevant. I think there was certainly kind of using symbolic language felt very much as though it was there, and that's something that I would pick up, and I think it's quite a textbook concept really. So, for example, the cloak of invisibility I used to help us make some sense out of things. And the fact that it had been presented in the session, for me, means it's relevant. Again, there are thousands of ways of describing things, but the language, the words people use are often, you know, really, really relevant, really important, and I think can really help somebody to make sense of something. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Tina. Thank you again for agreeing to be filmed and for delivering the session, and thank you for answering the questions. Thank you.